So I was studying film at Northwestern, and I was doing stand-up. And another stand-up, or a group of stand-ups, approached me about putting together a cable access sketch comedy show. And that show was called The Loser Club. And it was, you know, basically that format, an SCTV kind of format. And I've always been drawn to sketch comedy. I've always liked it. You know, I was 12 years old when Saturday Night Live first started, and that really resonated with me. That was like the first, all the comedy up until then, even if it was funny, like the Dick Van Dyke Show or Mel Brooks or something, it didn't have much edge to it. Whereas the original Saturday Night Live at that time in 1975 had a lot of edge to it. It wasn't just funny, it was kind of adult, edgy. And that was kind of, that just hit me at the right time. So I always liked sketch. I guess the better question is, why wasn't I always in sketch from the beginning? Why didn't I go to Second City? And I just didn't. So I always liked that format. I liked SCTV, I liked Monty Python. So these guys, knowing my film background, thought I'd be a good addition to their endeavor. And we did that show out of Matson, a cable access show in Matson. And the Loser Club was fairly terrible. Some of the people involved with it, I don't think were very good. So it was this weird situation where I'm doing what I like to do, but not really with people I like doing it with. And I quit after the first show because they just seemed to be using me as a camera operator. And I thought, you know, I don't want to just hold the camera for your lame bits, you know. And so they talked me back into coming back, and I think we did 15 episodes. And you know, all the time I wanted to quit. And we got kicked out of Matson because these guys were so terrible and got in fights with everyone. And then we were doing it out of a cable access station in Glen Ellen. And eventually moved to Chicago Cable Access. And you have to renew your access membership every year. So I thought, well, I'll finish off the show until our membership expires, and then I won't do the show anymore. And I drove up to doing the show one day, and Tim Baker, who was another guy, another one of the comedians doing the show, he was outside the Glen Ellen station smoking a cigarette, looking like terrible, like really depressing, like, Dale, I'm gonna quit the show. And I was like, so, great, let's both quit the show, let's start doing our own show. So there were 6 people of the original Loser Club, and 3 of us split off to do We're Geniuses in France, and the 3 others continued doing the Loser Club for a while. So I just kind of, there was no grand master plan, I just kind of fell into it. And the other thing that happened coincidentally with it, I was dissatisfied with doing stand-up. I did stand-up basically from when I was 20 to about 30. And to do stand-up professionally, you have to work a lot of weird suburban clubs and one-nighters like in Wisconsin and Indiana. And the kind of material that I wanted to do, you can't do in those types of clubs. So the kind of stand-up I was, I couldn't just, I needed a response from the audience. I couldn't just do my material and not get laughs and not have it affect me. Some comedians can do that. They can just plow through and do their stuff. Janine Garofalo does that. But I couldn't. So I would put in a lot of kind of safe jokes. I'd sprinkle them throughout. So I could never, and those kind of safe jokes I didn't like. You know, there was kind of hack material. So I'm doing material I don't like all the time. Whereas doing a TV show, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to care about the response from, you know, I just do it, I do whatever I want. It can be as edgy as I want, it can be as bizarre as I want. I don't have to rely on laughter to alter the performance. So I was way more prolific as a sketch writer than I was as a stand-up. So I just kind of naturally went to doing that. And then the reason to kind of do the show was since I wasn't doing stand-up, was kind of like a gym for a boxer. So by having to meet deadlines week after week after, it made me have to generate material. So instead of just having written material I could send out, I had video stuff that I could send out.
So you tried to snowball We're Geniuses in France into other creative endeavors?
Well, kind of. The idea of the show was never that, oh, we'll do this show and we could sell it to Comedy Central, like some other, like Kids in the Hall or something like. Because it was just me, basically. It was just one guy doing all the writing, the majority performing, directing, editing, producing. You know, nobody does that. Like Kids in the Hall were 5 people doing that, plus all the production stuff. So if I had 5 people as invested in it as I was, then maybe it would be something that you could sell as a show to a network. But what I could do is use it as writing samples. So I could pick, you know, out of 100 sketches, I could pick 3 or 4 that I could submit some other place to try to do something professional. Well, the quick answer is not really. I mean, I was just doing what I thought I could do. When you have, you know, a half an hour to fill every month, you're not really thinking about anything. You're just doing. You know, there's no editing. You know, like Chappelle's show or any professional show would like cut out certain things. Certain bits didn't work. They would leave the show. We didn't have room for that because everything had to fill that half hour a month that I was trying to do basically on my own, or a lot of times I would get like shorts from other places and also air those. So I would, I guess the answer to that question is I was doing what a lot of people, well, like what Kids in the Hall were doing. I think that's a throwback to, again, my influences. So it is like the original Saturday Night Live, and that might be hard to tell from now, or like SCTV, or like Monty Python. It was an updated version of that. So around the same time, the other sketch comedy shows would be Mad TV, Mr. Show, Kids in the Hall was around the same time and had ended, and Chappelle's show. And we were basically, you know, it's basically just doing local kind of do-it-yourself sketches. The area where that's changed is now like everybody does that. Yeah. With YouTube, everybody does that. There are hundreds of sketch groups doing videos.
Even on like cable television, there's Key and Peele, there's The Whitest Kids You Know, there's stuff that I can't even mention off the top of my head because I watch the shit. But I mean, like, it seems that it's a lot bigger of a format now than it was when you were doing it.
Yeah, it is. And I think part of that is because of the YouTube stuff. Yeah. So back then, kind of cable access was like the YouTube of 1994. Yeah. You know, Kids in the Hall started as a cable access show. And then I don't know at what point kind of YouTube actually became a thing. Yeah. And then everybody saw that as a way to do sketches and get noticed. And a lot of people, you know, Lonely Island came out of that kind of, they were like one of the first ones to come out of, we make our own kind of internet videos and actually have them go somewhere. But we had been doing that, you know, 8 years prior to that. So we just kind of, we're kind of filling in the vacuum between traditional TV and the internet taking over. There was public access. Yeah. And now really you don't need that anymore because everybody has access to stuff. Everybody can get stuff broadcast. But then the idea of public access was, there are only these television networks, they're major corporations, regular people can't get their voices heard. Public access allows anybody to get their voices heard. Well, the internet allows anybody to get their voices heard. Back then you could literally walk in with a 3/4 inch tape and hand it to them. Anybody who lived in the city of Chicago could do that. If you wanted to use their facilities, you had to be certified through CAN TV. I don't know the landscape of public access at this point because I haven't had cable in like 12 years. So at a certain point I couldn't watch the show being cable cast anymore because I didn't have cable anymore. Yeah. So I don't know what it's like. I just assume it's I don't know that it's changed much since when I started doing it, because it's like all the same shows. Because like once you were locked into a time slot, like Can TV didn't take all the shows and program it like a regular station, thinking this show would be good with this show, and this show would be good Wednesdays at 7, and this show would be good Sundays at 6. They just kind of took whatever they had and threw it on. And once you locked into a time slot, and basically all you had to do was
bring like a bunch of tapes at once.
Yeah, and then keep submitting. So as long as you kept submitting stuff on time, you were locked into that time slot. So people were really reluctant to ever give those up. Yeah. So I mean, the same shows were on forever and ever and ever and never changing, and I think kind of blocked out new voices. Right, Nation of Islam. 800 Nation of Islam shows. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And yeah, so a lot of the shows then that I think stayed there, I'm trying to think. I mean, anything. Anything.
Well, you know, I actually made a list of the other shows.
Oh, good.
Ask you, Mike, can we do this?
Yes.
I remember the Mike Kerben Psychic Show.
Yeah.
It aired
I remember
afternoons because they filmed at the studio, and they had that live studio audience, the Psychic Slugs, with those dudes that would show up in like costumes.
Please find Mike Kerben and interview him.
I'm trying to. He's in like Las Vegas. That's the closest I can track him down. Is he's got a show out of Las Vegas. But none of this stuff is. You're the only guy with this stuff on YouTube too. That's it.
Yeah, Mike Kerben was insane. I mean, he's just insane. So that's the thing about public. You would and I worked there, so these people would come through the door. I wasn't working there when Mike Kerben was there.
Okay.
Maybe he had moved to Las Vegas. But I mean, literally any insane person with an idea for the show could put a camera on themselves and have it broadcast throughout Chicago. And that guy certifiably was nuts. And a psychic. Yeah, that was a great show. The Mike Kerben. I had completely forgotten that show.
Wow. Okay. So you weren't there for any like studio audience things?
No.
Because that was kind of the cool component of the show, is that you could come in off the street and be a part of the audience. And I don't know who these people were.
Right.
That he would get, but they would be there every
That's a good
show
question.
in these freaking outfits, like heckling the audience, and it was like MST2K kind of, where you'd be watching this horrible train wreck. But it was the people in the audience that kind of made it entertainable for half hour.
Well, what I assume, and I don't know anything more about Mike Kerben than you do, is that, you know, no matter how crazy you are, you know, if you're Charles Manson, somebody will follow you. So somebody must have thought Mike Kerben was legitimately psychic, and that was his little cult, and that would be his audience. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah. There was a show that these guys that reviewed comic books.
Yeah.
And actually, the shop right over here. It was like Wabash and Madison.
Yeah, we used to parody that show. So it might have been after you left Chicago, but our show was called Comic Books Examined, and it would be me and Tim Baker, and we'd play a couple of geeks, and we did like Batman and, you know, different stuff. But that was, sometimes we'd do direct parodies of other cable access shows, and that was one we did. And that show ended not long after we did our parody, so I hope I didn't have anything to do with them quitting, but I doubt it.
And then there was this one thing I remember, I don't know if I'd really call it a show. It was this guy that like wore like, not like Svengoolie makeup, but some kind of weird face paint. And he would do like coke and like talk a bunch of shit at the camera.
Oh!
And then he did this thing where a dildo would go like this, and then they would play The Doors, Touch Me. You remember that?
Vaguely.
And then it would be like that, trying to like orientate it for the camera. And it would go through a verse of Touch Me by The Doors, and then like it would start over again. It would be right here, and it would just keep rotating.
It would be on at like 1 in the morning.
Yeah, and it would just rotate around for like half an hour. And it was just, Yeah,
I don't know if they have shows like that on Channel 19 anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think that was a Chicago-based show, though.
Okay.
I think it was from, and I don't know where I'm getting this, because I had completely forgotten that show.
Yeah.
Like Indiana or someplace.
That sounds right.
But, you know, so what these guys would do, like guys with shows like that, is they, you know, try to create a network in different cities. So all you had to do was find somebody whose address was in Chicago, send them a tape, and have them deliver it to Channel 19, and they would air it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that show was crazy. And to go back on your question before about you know, the horrible shows on ABC Friday nights. So that's the one thing. So there's a lot of disadvantages to being on public access. There's a stigma. There's being associated with shows like Mike Kirban, right? That it's just crap. That, you know,
it's entertaining.
Right, but you're associated with like the worst TV in the world, and you're not paid and all this stuff. So public access has this stigma. But what it did do is you could do absolutely anything you wanted. Whereas on any kind of, even Comedy Central or, you know, any for-profit entity, there's somebody going to be telling you what to do. Whereas on cable access, I could just go on and do I had absolute, complete artistic freedom. Now that's not always a good thing. You know, you wipe out terribly sometimes, but it does give you, you know, hey, I'm as free as a bird. Lorne Michaels isn't going to get mad at me. Nobody's going to take away my lavish paycheck. Nobody's going to take away my big house and fancy cars. I can do absolutely whatever I want to. That was the beauty of cable access.